offense, man, you can point your finger everywhere. It's something. I mean, the quarterback was bad. For people, we've talked about Jalen Hurts' accuracy many times, Jody, and people get angry at me. Put on that film and watch that accuracy, and now you know what we're talking about. It was atrocious, pretty much all night. It was one of those games when there were plays to be made. The throws were off. The ball placement was terrible. I talked about the receivers. The running backs weren't even involved.
Bit of a tough one here today on Birds 365 since the Eagles cut their tails kicked as badly as they did down here in Dallas. Hey, at least I was sitting on my comfortable couch. John McMullen had to fly all the way down to Dallas to watch that disaster last night for the Birds. How was your flight, J-Mac?
The flight was okay. We'll see. We'll see about the one back. That's still to be determined. As good as he can get it. Yeah, obviously disappointing from the Eagles' perspective. And that was kind of my fear manifesting itself in that if they got in a shootout, they weren't equipped for it. And they got in a shootout and they weren't equipped for it. So it's not surprising, but obviously when you lose to a division rival like that with that kind of performance, it's tough to spin anything positive out of it.
Since you want to bring up positivity, John, you kind of made me pivot here. Was there any positivity from any player in this game or anything?
Javon Hargrave, I thought, played well early in the game, especially, and continues to dominate. Didn't have much help on the defensive side of the football. Certainly from the linebackers, I thought they finally, that weakness finally showed and pretty consistently. Against the Cowboys, you could run the football. But interestingly, the Cowboys didn't get any gas runs. I think their longest run was 13 yards, but it was 5, 6 every single time, just consistently, because those linebackers can't hold up and run support. And it's almost to the point you got to get TJ Edwards on the field and accept his coverage limitations if you're going to stop running games moving forward, because people are watching that film, believe me. And they're just going to double team Fletcher Cox and Javon and say, okay, let's see if the other guys can tackle and beat us. So that's a big concern. Aaron Cepas was solid again. And maybe that means something in a close game down the road somewhere, because he's been really impressive, especially pinning teams back. Other than that, mainly I got to talk about AT&T Stadium and the class outfit Jerry Jones runs. And people don't want to hear about that. So,
no. All right, let's enough of this positivity. They got their asses kicked. Let's stick to the facts, Jack. Like, was Ryan Kerrigan actually ever on the field? I see where it says he was out there for 30-some-odd% of the snaps. I didn't notice him. He sure as hell didn't make a tackle. I don't think he was involved in a play. When Brandon Graham went down, we speculated as to how the Eagles are going to fill that void. Well, whatever Ryan Kerrigan was supposed to give him, he gave him nada squata last night. Where the hell was he?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thumb surgery was a little bit more a bigger deal than the Eagles admitted at the time. And Ryan he said it this week leading up to the game, you still can't grab. So it's pretty difficult if you can't use your hands to be effective. But look, I can't get to Ryan Kerrigan. I hear what you're saying, Jody, but I got to get to 57 things before I get to Ryan Kerrigan. I mean, why is Patrick Johnson on, Jonathan Gannon, who I really like and I really have a lot of respect for, and I think he's going to be a good coach in this league for a long time. I think he's going to be a head coach. I don't know what the heck he was trying to do at the beginning of that game. And, Nick Sirianni always says players, players, players. Well, maybe JG can learn a lesson from that, although Nick's not the one to look for lessons today, but put Josh Sweat out there. I don't want to see Patrick Johnson. I want to see 3-4 looks. You don't have Brandon Graham. Put Josh Sweat out there. I don't want to see that nonsense, especially when the lesser players aren't getting it done. You're not fooling anybody. And I think got a little bit too much into that, especially early in the game. And, if anything, Mike McCarthy gave the Eagles a break at the end of the half with some just mind-numbing time management. And you thought, man, if they come out in the second half and play well, they could get back in this game. And they gave them an open door, and they couldn't do anything with that Cowboys offense. And when the Cowboys did fail, it was generally from shooting themselves in the foot.
John, I'll go a little higher on the priority this year. I think Nick Sirianni, I don't know if you got to see any of the game broadcast yet, but when Derek Barnett had his penalty, you could read Nick Sirianni's lips. It's always him. It was clear as day what he was saying. Are we finally?
I didn't see it, but I heard about it. I sure heard about it. People were talking about it. This team has 35 penalties. And again, people are going to take this as, and remember, those are accepted penalties. Right. I don't know how many were declined yesterday. They lead the NFL by, I think, 8 total penalties. They have the most penalties through 3 games in franchise history. And ain't just Derek Barnett, and that's not defending him because he's probably the worst culprit. But then as a head coach, you don't do that. You got to know the cameras are on you. You can't show that frustration. And Nick admitted he was frustrated when he did that in his press conference after. Jalen Hurts kind of did something similar to Devontae Smith. I heard. I haven't seen the broadcast when Devontae Smith fell down. And, oh, by the way, he's getting out physical. And we're back to 166 pounds. And we're back to he's going to have hiccups as a rookie wide receiver, and he's just not physical enough against NFL corners at this point. But when your head coach shows that outward frustration, it's obviously not a good thing. I get his frustration, but it isn't always Derek. It's 35 stinking penalties. And again, if you add in the penalties that aren't accepted, you're way over that mark. This looks like an undisciplined bunch. And then we start, we're a long ways away from week 1 because now we start to, do they practice enough? Do they have a chance to get disciplined? What the heck is going on here? And it ain't good.
Couple of things, J-Mac. I'll hold up on the questioning Devontae Smith just yet because he fell down untouched on the pick 6. And that's what he and Jalen Hurts were talking about. Jalen went over and said, what happened? And Devontae kind of said, I fell, which he did. Untouched, had nothing to do with being out physical.
But he's being out physical in a consistent fashion. And that's a concern. That is a concern. The best receiver on this team through 3 weeks has been Quez Watkins.
That's
now,
true.
I like Quez. Quez is, not getting attention, so you have to add that into the context. The other guys get more attention. But if you look at Devontae Smith and Jalen Reagor, those are supposed to be your playmakers. And they're not making plays. And they're not helping the quarterback, and maybe the quarterback's not helping them. But they're all young, and they're all having issues. And unfortunately, these are our worst concerns coming to life right in front of us.
John, let me follow up on something you said about discipline and practicing. That's how I started today's show because all the big guys writing after last night's game. No one suggested this team looked woefully unprepared last night. Coming into the game, everybody thought they had a chance, good compete. And then they just went out and didn't compete. Were beaten at the point of attack badly. stupid penalties, one after the other after the other. You're right. Not only Derek Barnett, he didn't get 13 last night. The Eagles got 13. So that's across the board. What happened to we don't need to practice harder, we'll practice smarter? And going all the way back, as Jeff pointed out, to the preseason workouts, when the Eagles were one of the teams that said mandatory, schmandatory. As long as we can all hold hands, sing kumbaya, and agree that we're going to show up, we'll just do a little work and get the hell out of Dodge. Can we now officially stamp the Eagles' overall organizational stance of how to handle preseason as a failure?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could say it is a failure. I mean, I think if you go back to the negotiation, it wasn't much of a negotiation. The players weren't coming in, so the Eagles spun it as, okay, let's do this, and then we'll get a few guys to come in. And by the way, I don't think that's Nick Sirianni's fault, but it's just the tack that the NFLPA took in the offseason, not only in this city, but in a lot of cities. And the Eagles didn't have a veteran coach that could put his foot down. You know, a rookie head coach can't put his foot down and say, no, you guys show up, or this or that. So I don't put much stock in that. But I look at it like this, Jody, is that, you know, they only did it for one reason. They only practiced the way they practice for one reason, and that's to legislate injuries. And I always say you can't legislate injuries. Well, you can. I overstate that. You know, if you're not on the field, you're probably not going to get hurt. But when you do get on the field, that's not going to help you. The fact that you weren't on the field before, it's probably going to hinder you. There's no scientific proof of that, but it's probably going to hinder you if you go with the callous hand theory. You know, if I show up to the docks tomorrow, I'm not going to feel pretty good because I'm not used to it. Or if I go crab fishing on the deadliest catch, I'm not going to feel too good because I'm not used to it. I think there is something to playing professional football, and you got to toughen yourself up for what comes. And now we're seeing injury after injury after injury after injury. And we'll hear about Isaac Seumalo later, but it's sure Jason Kelsey was talking like that could be a season-ending injury. So we'll see. And already the offensive line, the attrition is pretty significant. Now, Jordan Mailata, luckily his injury is not that serious. Brandon Brooks will be back at some point, so it's not quite as bad as last year. But all of a sudden, the injuries are piling up, and Kayvon Wallace is hurt again. You know, what did that preseason do other than get you to week one healthy, and then the attrition starts?
John, you were a little concerned last week about Nick Sirianni, you know, the sleepless nights comment, and, you know, basically him kind of doubting himself, him kind of questioning himself in this league. And Jody and I were talking about this earlier. How do you feel he reacted last night, just in game and post game, just overall? Like, is he still kind of creating that cloud of self-doubt in him?
Well, in game, he was an abject disaster. I mean, he got punched in the mouth and just, yeah, he curled up in a ball. I didn't see any adjustments. I didn't see any trying to change things. I didn't see anything. I mean, I'm surprised we've gotten this far in the conversation without talking about Miles Sanders getting 2 runs in a football game for the Philadelphia Eagles, who all their fan base does is talk about the run game, and how horrible Doug Peterson was and how horrible Andy Reid was. I can't picture their top running backs getting 2 carries in a game. And, you know, there's a bunch of people, and there is a bunch of people in this organization who used to work for this organization who were telling me, assuring me, oh, Nick Sirianni's going to scheme these guys up. Nick Sirianni's going to do this. Nick Sirianni's going to do that. Doug Peterson was this and negative, and Doug Peterson didn't do this. The most glaring thing I saw, and it was per ESPN, so I want to even credit their ESPN stats and info. The Eagles had 0 plays with motion, pre-snap motion on offense. 0. In an NFL game in 2021, Mr. I'm going to scheme everybody up. No pre-snap motion. So what the heck is going on there? Is the quarterback can't handle it? The young receivers can't handle it? What? I can't even get to the running game. That just blows my mind. And then I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I didn't see him. I didn't see him run any kind of jet motion, any kind of anything to try to get Dan Quinn's defense looking the wrong way, having their eyes in a different direction. With Sean McVay, and he's the toast of the NFL town, and everybody wants to copy him. And Doug Peterson couldn't do all this, and we got the young, innovative coach on the cutting edge. Zero, and I can't explain it.
That is a pretty jump off the page stat that I didn't even realize from last night. Certainly you did realize. Wait, when was the last time the Eagles ran the ball as the game was ongoing? And at the end of the game, you saw three runs. Very good, which was a bit of a surprise. Didn't see that one coming. But here's the other thing that just annoyed me, John, above and beyond the fact that I think they were woefully ill-prepared, and it does go all the way back to July that the Eagles took a specific course, and I think it's blowing up in their face right now. They were dominated at the point of attack. And you, me, and everybody else who covered the Eagles said, well, the Eagles actually could be competitive. You and I went with 8 wins because at least they match up with other teams in the trenches. Their offensive line is still a strong point. Their defensive line is more stout in the middle, but the outside could actually be okay too. They got crushed at the point of attack in both of the 2 trenches last night. Given the slack that the injuries have caused, and there's some involved, okay, but that's this much. How did they get so badly dominated by a Cowboy team that isn't known to be that great in the trenches? Shoot, they had to take their number 1 draft pick and drop them down from linebacker to defensive end just to give themselves some kind of push on the defensive line. How embarrassing was the point of attack last night?
Well, I think defensively, considering the Cowboys were down about, 6 defensive linemen, some ridiculous number, I think that part of it was worse. But honestly, I look at the individual performances. For instance, I didn't think Andre Dillard played that poorly. If you looked at it in game, Landon
in comparison to Dickerson and Herbig, you're right. Andre Dillard played pretty well last night.
Yeah, Landon got beat once really badly on that inside rush, and I imagine he's not going to grade out well again. And Herbig obviously came in late when the game was already lost, but that's a concern moving forward. I defensively, we'll see how the grades come out, but I would say Javon Hargrave played great. Gave him headaches. They just double teamed Fletcher and Javon on basic. That was their game plan. They just double teamed him and said, okay, Eric Wilson, tackle somebody. And Eric Wilson can't tackle anyone. Well, that's not true. He tackles everybody, but 6 or 7 yards downfield. Yeah. And Alex Singleton wasn't much better. He probably had his worst game in a long time. I just look at that second level, and I was wondering how this was my concern against San Francisco, because they have the big reputation as the great run scheme, and they were able to do it, and they played really well. And Jonathan Gannon was able to mask it, and he couldn't do it yesterday. I mean, those guys were just getting destroyed. And part of it was Ezekiel Elliott just carrying them, because I get the most explosive run was 13 yards, but everything was 6 or 7 or 8 yards, and all of a sudden you're in second or third and short, and that opens up the whole playbook. So I think that was the biggest problem defensively. Offense, man, you can point your finger everywhere. It's something. I mean, the quarterback was bad. For people, we've talked about Jalen Hurts' accuracy many times, Jody, and people get angry at me. Put on that film and watch that accuracy, And now you know what we're talking about. It was atrocious pretty much all night. It was one of those games when there were plays to be made, the throws were off. The ball placement was terrible. I talked about the receivers. The running backs weren't even involved. When you're talking about, well, Andre Dillard wasn't a disaster. That was the bar on the offensive line. They should have got beaten by more than they did. I mean, that was extended garbage time. So anybody looking at these statistics and saying, well, Jalen did some nice things late, who cares? That's why I always say the NFL is not a statistics-based game. That was the definition of garbage time, significant garbage time. And that's the only reason the stats don't look terrible at the end of the game.
John, one of the things, I just rolled my eyes at Nick Sirianni during the press conference last night when he just laid that bullcrap excuse about, well, the game dictated itself, and that's why I only ran the ball 3 times. Miles Sanders busted a 24-yard run. They did like a 2-yard scramble with her or whatever that was, and then he had a 3-yard run, and that was it. That's all we saw. Like, how can he possibly defend that's how the game was dictated when it was still 27, they were at midfield in the second quarter?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny when he finally did run the ball, which I think was late in the second quarter. He did get a nice run, so that I think makes it even worse. I think Jody asked me yesterday, what's the run pass ratio going to be? Well, tell me he's up in the second half. Now, even I didn't think it would be this bad. But you see how it manifests itself. Yeah, he completely panicked and totally forgot about the running game, other than Jalen Hurts, obviously, running the football himself. I had more of an issue with Nick saying, well, we thought, because I've been talking about this for a while. We thought Dallas was going to be able to score some points, so we thought we had to keep up, and that was his game plan, to keep up with this team. No, your game plan should be to figure out how to slow them down because you can't keep up with them. And he's like, we got to find a way to keep up with them. Well, you have to know your personnel, Mr. Players. You don't have Dak Prescott. You don't have C.D. Lamb. You don't have Ezekiel Elliott. You don't have Tony Pollard. I mean, that to me was the far bigger issue of Nick Sirianni. You don't go, oh, we have to keep up with this team. No, you don't raise the white flag. You try to do what you did against San Francisco and Atlanta, knowing there's better offensive talent. You try to slow them down as much as possible. And by the way, you say, well, that's more of a defensive thing. Yes, it is. But you can help the defense by running the football. Maybe have time of possession that isn't 12 minutes to 3 minutes, essentially, in the first quarter. Why not, convert a third down, scheme something up with motion, and maybe have some extra plays, and you convert a third down, all of a sudden there's a run. There's another run. You convert another one. That's how it works. But they didn't convert a third down until I think there were 8-9 minutes maybe left in the third quarter. Yeah, it was bad.
It was bad, and Nick Sirianni did talk after last night's game, but we'll have his day after press gathering.
No,
today.
He won't, Jody.
None? No, they're completely passing on it?
Completely passed. Not talking till Wednesday.
Okay.
Too much work to do. Short week. Got to get in there to work 7 hours on third downs. Work 7 hours on red zone. Hey, Nick, when you're working those 7 hours, how about putting some pre-snap motion in your offense? In one of the, maybe an hour 6. How's that?
Think he'll be studying his press conference from last night?
Probably. He takes this stuff too hard.
Hey,
but yeah, I mean, that is a bad performance by a rookie head coach and a bad performance by a very young quarterback in start number 7. And unfortunately, it was on Monday night against your the fan base's biggest rival.
All right, so let's take a little peek ahead, even beyond the work that the Eagles are going to put on this week, breaking down film and figuring out what went wrong. Hey, they got a fellow 1 and 2 team coming up this weekend.
Yeah.
Same record as the Eagles. They're not facing off against a team with a better record. Unfortunately, it's the Kansas City Chiefs, who have a little bit of a mad on, who have only been to the last 2 Super Bowls in a row. Could it be even uglier this weekend, John?
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I mean, Kansas City's obviously going to come in angry with that record. I would think Patrick Mahomes, and let's hope Nick Sirianni doesn't. Hey, we got to keep up with this team. We got to keep up with Patrick Mahomes. No, you better find another way, obviously, and we hope Andy Reid's okay. But that's some off the field stuff they have to deal with. So obviously they're not playing well. They're not playing nearly as well as they expected. People are talking about 17-0 nonsense with that team. So I mean, you got to take advantage of the fact you're at home, and maybe you do just what I said because you want to shorten the game. If you're playing Dallas and Kansas City or Tampa Bay, who's coming up, you should want to shorten the game. Now, I know the analytics people are going to yell at me. I know the nerds are going to be on Twitter. You can't do that. You can't worry about that. Look, if you don't have the talent to use all those numbers and go for 4th and 5, you should have went for 4th and 5. Everything's green light, green light, green light. Go for this, go for that. When you don't have anybody executing on the offensive side of the football, sometimes you have to take that older school mentality, and you do. And by the way, I'm the first to admit your margin of error becomes much smaller. You have to play a certain way. You have to do everything correctly. The minute you get behind by 2 scores, the game is probably over. But that's the point. The goal is to not get behind by 2 scores. How do you do that against the Kansas City Chiefs? Keep the football away from them. Right. And the only way you can do that is to stay on the field and convert some damn 3rd downs and run the football a little bit.
I'm going to go out on a major limb here and predict more carries for Miles Sanders.
I'm going to go
than he had last night. I know it's a little. Hey, every once in a while you got to come with a hot take. Here's mine: Miles Sanders, more carries next week against the Kansas City Chiefs. Are you with me, guys?
I am with you. And
That's how you get 1% better every day.
Yeah. Let me throw one more thing out there. Jim Bob Cooter's here, but in a consultant role. We go all the way back to when this coaching staff was put together, and we kept waiting for that veteran name on the offensive side to help the first-time play caller. Boy, man, I would have loved to have seen that yesterday. Somebody to just be in Nick Sirianni's ear and say, hey, slow it down. We haven't run the football. We got to get it to Miles. We got to do this. Could be Kenny Gainwell. Could be Boston Scott. Something. Calm this down. Run a jet sweep. Try to scheme a first down. Somebody to get in his ear. I don't know who that is. Kevin Patullo doesn't have that cachet. Shane Steichen doesn't seem to have that cachet. So that's another problem than just sticking the file.
John, I kind of wanted to point this out too. How much of this falls on the guy who never seems to get fired at all, Howie Roseman, for the coaching hire, for everything that is going on? He's the one constant why this team just gets worse and worse and worse every single season.
Well, I don't think he's a constant on that, but because I think if Howie Roseman was in charge of that, Josh McDaniels would be the coach of the Eagles.
That is true,
Which, by the way, I don't think would work, but I think that would have been the way they went. So that one goes. That one sits squarely on the big guy. I mean, Jeffrey Lurie made that decision, and look, it's. I'm not going to say Nick Sirianni's going to be a bad coach after 3 games, just like I wasn't going to say he's not a great coach after that first game when everybody was going to that extreme. What I've said pretty consistently is you're going to have a lot of hiccups with a young rookie head coach who probably was skipping steps in his career at least a little bit, and you're seeing it. And it shouldn't be a surprise.
Yeah, McMullen and I have been doing this together too long now because we both went down the where is the veteran stabilizing hand on this staff to be able to give Nick Sirianni a leg up when things go bad like they did last night in Dallas. J-Mac, good stuff. Safe flight home. I will see you here with me tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I'll be in late, but I'll be there. I'm always up. You know that.
Okay. Yeah, get the dog out early so we're ready to rock at 8 o'clock. That is John McMullen, the usual co-host of this show. Good enough, lucky enough to have Jeff Kerr with me today. We'll come back. We got a couple of loose ends to tie up. Man, with Eagles loose last night in their 41-21 beatdown at the hands of the Cowboys. Coming back, putting a bow on the show here on Birds 365.